And so don't expect that just one day you have this realization that, oh, maybe I want to do things differently. Maybe I want to slow down. And then, okay, now I'm dropping into this guru meditative state. That's highly unlikely and an unreasonable expectation to put on yourself. Probably that expectation will be there because these people tend to be very goal orientated and achievement orientated. You know, you need to be good at things and proficient. So that's a tough hurdle to get over, because when the solution presented to you is to get quiet and practice the art of being, it's like it just doesn't even make cognitive sense. And I'm one of the ones who met that and thought this is ridiculous. Like, you know, the first time I learned meditation, it was when I was in the midst of my corporate career, and I thought this is the biggest waste of time ever. I just sit here and listen even more intensely to my thoughts, you know, and get in more of a tangle. Why would people ever do this? But again, it's like learning to walk again. It's not going to look good at the start, but, you know, just like our resilient little toddlers, when they fall over, they get up and walk again. We've got to learn to do the same thing. And for women, this is a big thing, and I know you relate to this, Blanca, but learning to be messy, learning to just let go, learning for it to not look perfect and being okay with that. Such a big part of the journey.
Hello, ladies. Welcome. Here's your friend Blanca. We have another episode of our summit, of the Wounds to Wings Summit. And today we have a dear friend of mine. We have been together in so many capacities. And today I will introduce her to you, Anne van der Giessen. She is just, she's so amazing. I get the goosebumps by the seconds before reading her bio. But I can tell you, I love her. And after this conversation, if you don't know Anne, you will grow to love her as well. Anne likes to refer herself as a professional space holder. Yeah, she holds the space, and you will see why. Her work sits in the intersection of coaching, mentoring, consulting, healing. I love that she says that. Yes, healing. Yeah, spirit. She works with smart and driven high performers, high potentials, and impactful leaders to help them master their inner world so that they can truly master their outer game. Whether working with an individual, a company, or in a group context, Anne has a profound ability to ask deeper questions and stimulate important conversations in a way that feels safe and accessible and leads to transformational outcomes. Nuance, truth, and integrity are themes you'll meet in Anne's very human-centered work. And I'm so delighted to have you with us. I'm so delighted. Thank you for accepting this invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Blanca, and thank you for that really warm introduction. And I there's so much reciprocity here. I very much respect you and what you represent in the world as well. And it's so wonderful to be able to connect in this way and share and grow and share with your audience as well.
Delighted. This summit is all about women, the feminine. The divine feminine coming back. And you don't put it really clearly in your bio that many of your customers, many of your clients are actually men. And we have gotten into conversation, and the reason why you're here was because we have the same feeling. And this is the why we, in the title of talk, you call it the P of patriarchy. And this is a conversation that we're going to have here, ladies and gentlemen. I hope there are some gentlemen here, but here we're going to be talking about, oh God, it's nuance, it's truth, it's integrity. I love that you say it. There has been a lot of drama about the patriarchy, a lot of aggression between genders. And this conversation strives to bring more nuance to this. And I really like to start these conversations with the original story. You working in this intersection of coaching and healing with high achievers, and high achievers, many are men. What is your origin story? How did you get there?
Well, thank you for that question, Blanca, and I'll try and keep it short because there is a lot of nuance in that as well. But essentially, I started out my career working in consulting. So I went through university and I studied commerce, accounting, and finance, and I ended up in one of the big 4 accounting firms and started out my career back in Australia. And I was working with mainly men at the time in their little consulting practice, taking care of advisory around mergers and acquisitions. It was probably around 80% men. So there weren't so many women in the field. And when I first got into it, I didn't really notice that. I thought actually it's fun to hang out with the boys. They're a little bit easier. I didn't feel as judged, and I didn't really give much thought to it until I started sort of having some conversations with other women who really shed the light. It's a bit of a problem that we don't have so many women. There's these certain things that don't go well. And, I was in my early 20s. And so working 60, 70 hours a week was kind of okay for me, work hard, play hard, let my hair down on the weekends. And I thought that it was all okay. But as I sort of moved through and started gathering these other perspectives and started noticing some things happening in my own body, I thought, something's not quite right here. I think it would feel a little bit more balanced if there was more women or certain characteristics, something that women would bring to the table. I was lucky enough to work with a couple of inspiring women more senior than me who again kept bringing more nuance into my views of the world. And as I went on, I noticed that I was starting to feel myself being driven by things that I didn't really understand and I couldn't control. The need to please people around me, the need to work hard at all other costs, the need to sort of meet all of these expectations that I didn't even know why they were there in the first place. So I ended up transferring to the Netherlands, where I am currently with the company, and things just got worse for me. There was even fewer women in the field where I was, and I was also a non-local, which made me strange on 2 accounts. And the challenges started to build for me, and I felt like I was losing touch with the essence of who I was. The only thing I could sort of connect myself to was the work that I was doing. And so when that didn't go well, I thought my world was crumbling. So if I didn't get the review score that I wanted, it's like, oh my gosh. And so there was this real attachment to my work. There was really no boundaries. I had no ability to say no. It was, if I had to work until 4:30 a.m., that was just something that I would do. I would struggle through it, and I would see that it wasn't good, but I felt powerless, unable to really intervene on what was going on. So it went on like this for a few years for me. And at some point, my body said, this isn't really going to work. So I ended up shifting jobs in the hope that would change things. But lucky guess, it didn't. It was only really when I started to do the inner work and understand what was happening on that subconscious level, my beliefs and the things that I was attaching myself to out in the world that I was living in, that were causing me these problems. So I ended up doing, of all things, a hypnotherapy training, where I learned a lot about how we come to have the subconscious wiring that we do, and why we have the beliefs that we do. And it just gave me so many insights into my world and the world of other people as well, as I started using it as a tool to help other people. So eventually I decided, other people can do my job here in consulting, and I think my time is better spent supporting others in also understanding their own beliefs and their own drivers, and finding a little bit more genuine joy in their lives, just like I'd been able to through using these methods. So that was almost 3 years ago now that I left the corporate world and started on my adventure with hypnotherapy, and then adding coaching, adding a lot of somatic, so body-based work to really understand ourselves and reconnect to what's important to us. And it's just a delight. It's given me so much perspective not only on the world that I'm in now, but also to understand the world that I came through, the world that I used to live in, and the belief systems that I used to be constrained by. So it's been quite the journey, you might say, to use that cliche word, but one that's been incredibly insightful. And you mentioned my work with men now. I find it so interesting because a lot of the thoughts and ideas I had about the men I was working with back in the day were completely false. I thought that all these men were tough and mean and driven and, you know, emotionless. But through my work now, I've learned that a lot of these men are facing exactly the same trouble that women do, but they just can't express it because at least that spectrum of society doesn't create room for it, doesn't allow for it, because there's certain societal projections and expectations of how men should be, especially in a really fast-paced, sort of high-pressure corporate environment. So a real turnaround, a real
I have
beautiful
to
perspective.
You there, and I want you to repeat that.
Which piece?
I want you to repeat that, ladies and ladies. we have this idea that men don't feel, are not fragile. I want you to repeat that those feelings that you see your high-paced male clients feeling.
Yeah, well, let me give you a tangible example, because I think this is something that people can relate to. So a few weeks ago, I spoke to a man who's a consultant who worked in a lot of the different industries in his career, but now a consultant. So still working with, C-level people. And he shared with me how his emotions were met as a child. And he had a sister as well. And so if his sister would fall over, his father would say, "Oh, you poor little thing, come on, stand up, are you okay?" And if he would fall over and experience the same emotions of, hurt and confusion and pain, he would just be told to toughen up and get up and, be a real man.
Be a man.
Yeah. So even as a child, this conditioning comes in, and that's something that's remembered very vividly as somebody who's, past midlife, really. So it's quite a profound thing that these impact that these things have on us. So just to make it tangible, and if you can imagine that belief system that he has, because I'm a boy, I'm not allowed to express my emotions. That's what is carried through, 3 decades of working life. And that's what we see when we enter this world, is this mask.
Yeah, absolutely. It's these masks that we are all wearing, and we just go to work and we put our suit, and that includes a mask of we have it all figured out. We have the MBA, the PhD, the Master in Science, and I'm the engineer, or I'm the director, I'm the vice president, and the fragility is out of the office. And the patriarchy. So the patriarchy is this system of thousands of years who has said, we have the man-centric family, the man-centric company. He must know all the answers. And now we're saying, oh my God, we have to destroy this. And this is a bad system for us, the victims. And there is something that doesn't really resonate with us, with you and me, and maybe with the listeners as well. Can you start disentangling this big unnuanced sentence?
Yeah, I can start, but I can't promise that I can finish because there are so many layers here. And I think just to start, there's a really important distinction to make between the patriarchy and the masculine, because they're not the same thing. And when I look at the patriarchy and the things that we see there, grabbing for power, being overly aggressive, this competition that is completely unreasonable, everybody competing against each other for something that's not even a clear goal, lack of transparency, hiding things, perpetuating lies and stories. These things belong to the patriarchy, but they don't necessarily belong to the masculine. They only do really to the extent that we're talking about what in spiritual realms you might refer to as the wounded masculine, the unhealthy masculine, because that's not how a healthy, fully expressed masculine will show up in the world. That looks very different to what we are labeling as the patriarchy. So I think to start with, that distinction is really, really important.
And even the distinction that all the things that you were mentioning of this wounded masculine, I can see it in women.
Mm-hmm.
I studied in high school, elementary school. I studied in girls' schools, just girls only schools, and I can tell you that so many women were like that. So many little girls were bullies and liars, and there was no this sisterhood support each other. There was more fear towards other women. So that's a very important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I see most often in my female clients as well is this inability to ask for support. And that's also something that belongs to the wounded feminine, you might say, that unhealthy element of the feminine. And just to be clear here as well, that the feminine doesn't belong to the woman and the masculine to the man. We all have both, but we tend to have an energy that we lead with. But you're so right about these sort of wounded masculine energies that are in the women as well. It's the grabbing, the controlling, and even the people pleasing elements. It's all a manifestation of not having a good sort of balance of those energies. And I think a lot of that comes because we judge the feminine to be weak. We as women who lead with that feminine energy on average. We judge that weakness, and so we go, okay, I should be more like the masculine. So then we have all of these examples out in the world of the unhealthy masculine. So that's what we perpetuate: the competition, the backstabbing, the gossiping, all of these kind of things, the lack of transparency, and holding and carrying too much. And some of that can even manifest in physical symptoms. If you've got a lot of back pain, quite often that's carrying too much, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Something that's not strange to me personally either. And so many of us have this living through us and don't necessarily know how to put words to it or really understand what's going on.
Yeah, totally. I one of the things that triggers me, and that triggered this conversation that was kind of the genesis, is one of the things that bothers me a lot is when women say, the modern feminist or the feminist I don't like say, aggressive verb, the patriarchy. We should destroy the patriarchy. And for me, this is like double negative. The patriarchy was a consciousness that allowed us to create electricity, banks, and it had some positive outcomes, and it's crumbling right now. We can say that it was really bad and it's crumbling. And we could argue that instead of saying, let's destroy it, we could instead say, let's build something new. What is that feeling that it gives to you when a woman says, oh, let's kill the patriarchy? What goes inside of you?
I love the way that you describe that. It's it generates really a feeling of unrest in me, because I think I'm a believer in the sort of Jungian psychology, But when you see something out there, it's also happening in here. And quite often when we look out and we go, you know, we've got to get rid of the patriarchy, there's a part of ourselves that we're denying in that. And it's almost as if we have a war inside. And then, you know, with so many people expressing those similar things, it ends up in sort of unrest in the collective. So I'm fully with you that I believe the answer is not to go out and, you know, burn everything down, but really to think about what kind of world we want to live in and to start rebuilding. And maybe some of the systems that we have now need to be a little bit reinforced before we can get the new systems up and running. I mean, these things don't happen overnight. We've got a lot of structures in place that are, you know, not necessarily done the right way. Not to use that word right, those labels right and wrong overly. One example of some of the nonsense that can come through with systems like this is the health insurance system in the US. That came into play largely because after World War II, there was a cap on wages put in place. And so for employers to be able to compete for employees, they had to give some extra benefit. So they started paying for health cover on some level. And then this whole industry was born out of this phenomenon that now we've just got all this money flowing through this really artificial system. So instead of people paying for the healthcare they're using, all this money is going to insurance companies. And so when you look at systems like this and the reason that was born, you kind of go, that's insane. And now we've got skyrocketing health insurance costs. So just to give a tangible example of how some of these attempts to control, which come really from that wounded masculine, right? Trying to control everything. It can perpetuate, and we don't even know why it's there anymore. So people born after that time just go, okay, well, health insurance is a general part of how things go, you know, especially in the US and the medical system they have there, the healthcare system. So starting to deconstruct those things is not going to be an overnight job, because they were born out of a decision, and then there's been this perpetuation of this thing that nobody really even understands anymore, therefore they don't question. So it's really going to take a lot of slowing down and reflecting and seeing what does work, what doesn't work, what's going to be the greatest good for society. And I feel it really needs to be a union of these energies, these masculine and feminine energies. It's not masculine is wrong, we bring in the feminine way. It's how do we marry these two together, because they are interdependent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Indeed, I am of the perception that this patriarchal way was considered a good idea because it was very clear, no? He is the responsible, like he is the savior. It was like born of a crisis. I always link it with the idea of the mythical deluge. So the king comes and saves us. And that kind of made sense. But now we have to say, well, we have been just walking with one leg. And what I see that is wrong with the kill the patriarchy is let's walk just with the other leg. Mm-hmm. And I see it in many conversations. Let's be feminine. Let's do business in a feminine way. We should do business in an integrated way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I can't agree more. My favorite metaphor for explaining this is to imagine that the masculine and feminine are like the wings of a bird. Imagine some big grand bird of prey, you know, gliding on the air, and if it just flies with one wing, then it's just going to turn around in circles. So whether we're leading with the masculine and completely disregarding the feminine, or the vice versa, going, okay, we need to be all feminine, in any case, we're going to be flying in circles. And so it's really extending both of those wings. Yeah, which I think is a nice metaphor given the name of this summit as well.
Yeah, indeed. It's really to have two wings. And we live in a paradoxical and poetic way, both energies. Mostly our audience is here of women, but maybe it's interesting that you bring us your expertise with working with men on how we can communicate better with men, help them, that could be maybe pushing it, but at least how we can deal in this new consciousness as women. How can we deal with men? How can we deal with even the older men, the one who were told 1,000 times, be a man?
Mm. Yeah, it was a very good question. And again, it's layered, it's nuanced. And what might work for communicating with one man might necessarily work for communicating with another man. It depends on the stories that they bring to the table. So in terms of an umbrella piece of advice, really to work on entering into all of these interactions we have, whether it's with men or women, but with a sense of openness and compassion and understanding where they come from is. Because if we can make people feel safe, that is really the key to understanding and to drawing out these stories and starting to build a little bit the picture. If we notice that we have a boss who's very sort of gripping and controlling, even daring to go into conversations and say, I'm noticing that, when I do this happens, is there something that I'm doing or not doing that's making you feel uncomfortable, or that stops you from being able to trust me with this task? And just to really come at those conversations, not with that aggression of, oh, you're so controlling and I can't deal with this anymore, get off my back, but really being curious, being compassionate, and just really meeting people where they are. And this may be a man or a woman, or it really doesn't matter. It's not a gender specific thing, because as you rightly pointed out, there's a lot of women who also lead with the masculine, especially in the leadership space. So it's really just meeting that with that sense of openness that can allow people to feel safe and share what's going on.
What would be your advice for a woman who is listening to this and says, ouch, maybe I have been too much in the wounded family masculine, ouch. If you have that self-awareness, what would you tell to a woman who is feeling that?
Well, first of all, I would really like to normalize it and say that it's okay. And just being able to recognize that in yourself and going, maybe this isn't the way I want to move forward, is already such a powerful thing. And really just trying to meet yourself in compassion for that. Because we don't do anything like this. We don't take on these beliefs with the intent to hurt anyone, or to cause damage, or to perpetuate the patriarchy. If you want to go down that line, we don't step into it with that reason. We do it because we think we should for some reason. We do it because maybe that's what our mothers did. Maybe that's what our bosses did. Maybe that was the behavior that we felt we needed to take on board and able to be successful, or to be liked, to be respected, any of these things. So really just to take a moment to sit with that in compassion and again, curiosity. They're my two favorite tools really in terms of the energy that you bring to these kind of inquiries. And, I think it's also useful to really start to have conversations around these things with other women, which is why I'm really glad that we're doing this today, Blanca, because I think there's so much power in the coming together of women and having these open and honest conversations. And once you start to see what's going on and decide that it's not really what you want to do anymore, that's the moment that you get to intervene. That's the moment you get to start making different choices and maybe even choosing for some more intensive support around working on this. So there's many roads that you can take from here, but the first one is just to pause, get quiet, and just be with what is, and be with it in compassion.
Oh, I love it. I love it. This quietness, this is so important that we need. This is so important that we need. recently I was, I am passionate about the subject of trauma, and I know you too. And I was reading the super famous book of The Body Keeps a Score, and the author shows us the MRI of a person in trauma. And the most telling sign that a person is in trauma is that the brain doesn't know what time it is. This exercise of being in the present moment is what brings us healing. When we forget, when we get into that stress and we don't know, we are there in the drama, just come back to this compassion and curiosity, come back to this. Is I love what you're saying.
Yeah. And also, I think it's really important to normalize that it can be really hard to move into stillness if you're in a cycle of this, so the wounded masculine energy, the controlling, the overthinking, the demanding, the confusion, or maybe lack of making decisions, lack of discernment is quite often the word they use, talking around the feminine. Quite often it's really, really hard to actually stop and to allow those thoughts to just clear from the mind and really be present. It's something that needs to be trained, not just in terms of the mind, but of the body. And so don't expect that just one day you have this realization that, oh, maybe I want to do things differently. Maybe I want to slow down. And then, okay, now I'm dropping into this guru meditative state. That's highly unlikely and an unreasonable expectation to put on yourself. Probably that expectation will be there because these people tend to be very goal orientated and achievement orientated. You need to be good at things and proficient. So that's a tough hurdle to get over, because when the solution presented to you is to get quiet and practice the art of being, it's like it just doesn't even make cognitive sense. And I'm one of the ones who met that and thought this is ridiculous. Like, the first time I learned meditation, it was when I was in the midst of my corporate career, and I thought this is the biggest waste of time ever. I just sit here and listen even more intensely to my thoughts, and get in more of a tangle. Why would people ever do this? But again, it's like learning to walk again. It's not going to look good at the start. But, just like our resilient little toddlers, when they fall over, they get up and walk again. We've got to learn to do the same thing. And for women, this is a big thing. And I know you relate to this, Blanca, but learning to be messy, learning to just let go, learning for it to not look perfect and being okay with that. Such a big part of the journey.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. This, I totally relate to what you're saying. I was so angry at myself, that I couldn't be peaceful. I am so angry, and then I couldn't go.
Yeah. And notice how what you're speaking to is the exact projection we see in society as well. It's wanting this sense of peace and order, and not being able to get it quickly, so we get angry. That the angry feminist, sort of, if you look at that as an archetype of sorts. It's what's happening in here. It's also what's happening out there, and it's almost a bit comical to look at it in that way.
Yeah, and I think in that to label it as comical is very useful. When I get to laugh at myself at how stupid it is that I'm angry, then it's like a huge door is open.
Yeah. Speaking of this idea of comical humor and play, one of my favorite exercises to share with anybody, but especially women going through this process, is to, every time you notice yourself getting a bit tired or too much into your task and too much in the stress, to take out a sheet of blank paper and draw a self-portrait with your eyes closed. And just take out a pen and just go for it. And it's really hilarious. And you see what you've drawn and it looks nothing like you. And it's just, it gives you a moment to just laugh and stop taking yourself so seriously. And it's the play and it's the creativity. You know, creativity is of the feminine. And, you know, that I think that's an interesting lens to look through as well. You know, we need to be able to think creatively, to think in terms of solutions to what we see in the world today. And if we keep the feminine shut down, or if we act from the wounded feminine, there's no opportunity for creativity to come up. And that lives in men and women. It lives in everyone, but it's of the feminine energy. It's an expression of the feminine. And if you don't like that language, you can say it's the flow energy. Go and flow, go being the masculine, flow being the feminine. It's not weak. It's just a different quality to the energy.
And it is sometimes I find it so crazy that we feel it as weak, because we all have that. I really remember when I was the super masculine, really type A, work hard, and then I got pregnant. And to grow a baby, you need to sleep. You need to wait. And what is weak about building a human being? It's extremely powerful. We need to remember that.
Absolutely. It's so true. And I think this is really something important to acknowledge, as, you know, regardless of gender, again, that there's a strength in both of these energies, and the union of those two is even more powerful. You know, so really not looking at them as one is better or worse or weaker or stronger or anything like that, but just seeing it as something that's really important to coexist. And, you know, if you look at the energy of Mother Nature, you know, just Mother Nature for a reason, it's the feminine energy that we have there. And so just seeing the beauty of nature, and, you know, she's the storms, and she's also the perfectly still, you know, balmy afternoons and the sun setting on the horizon. It's, you know, a picture perfect scene. She's all of that. She's got a big range of expression. And so there's so much beauty embedded in that feminine aspect as well, that I think it's really important to take hold of.
Yeah, it is so powerful. So I don't know if I put you on the spot, but I think you must have thought about this. So we have the patriarchy, the previous thousands years consciousness, and something new is emerging. Maybe if not how you call it, but how do you feel it? How do you imagine the future, this new earth, or this, I used to call it the heart center economy, this new future? What do you see emerging? What do you dream of, and what evidence you can give us and inspire us to build that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I have thought about it, but I don't think I've ever put it into words in a succinct way. So I'll give it a go. But I really see it as an opportunity for that union to occur, for us to really learn to respect and to meet each other. And this is not just the masculine learning to respect the feminine. It's the other way around, because this angry feminist energy that you spoke to, this is a denial of the masculine, and it's a denial of part of self. If we go back to that premise that we all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us. So I see a real meeting of those things. And I do also think that there'll be certain things that have to fall away in the process. You know, whenever, even if you bring it down to the individual level, whenever you go through a growth process, there's something that has to fall away. You know, for example, a lot of people, when they go on a personal development journey, they might find that some of the friendships they had in place are just not supportive. There's all this giving and no receiving. And they realize, well, I'm getting depleted from this, so I'm going to stop so much giving and just come back into balance. And then all of a sudden that person doesn't really want to be friends anymore. Right? So there's this falling away of those things that are no longer aligned. And to put that out into the collective, I think there will be similar things happening. There'll be certain structures where, you know, holes are discovered and they just can't survive anymore. And we're going into a really interesting time with things like digital currencies, and, you know, the economic system it's such an important piece, because money is energy, money is abundance, money is the tool to meeting our needs. And so we can't ignore the impact of that economic system that we all sit on, which is quite fragile when you look at it. So lots of change happening there. I hope that in this process there will be more equality. That's not what we've seen so much in the last couple of years, with a lot of the billionaires around the world getting richer and more income disparity. But I also see that as a gripping of the patriarchy to remain in control of certain things. And, you know, that's been a flow-on effect from things like lockdowns causing more of this income disparity. So there's so many moving parts when you look at this. But I think really over time, as long as we have this intention to hold that sense of openness and to have communication, open communication with each other, and to really take in these new ways of looking at the world and coming together, then, you know, I think we're going to come through it better than we've been in for many, many centuries. I think there's really so much potential to grow and expand through this process.
So exciting. I totally agree. I just see the future as really bright. The new structures, new financial structures, new business structures, new technology. And it starts within. It starts with the hope and with the curiosity, and by conversations. Conversations are so many. I've seen so beautiful examples of people who have lost their job in the past 2 years, and they started brand new little companies that now are feeding other families. I see hope. I see hope.
Yeah. And I love what you say, because sometimes we feel this pressure to, you know, go out and really impact the world at large, but it really starts with us as individuals, and then our family units, you know, what we're doing in terms of our work, and these rings of influence sort of go out from there. So really just focusing on getting things a little bit more in balance with yourself, coming back to your true core values and your true core needs that need to be met, and really addressing all of those things as individuals. And again, it doesn't matter what gender you are, whether you lead with a feminine, masculine, none of that matters, but really just coming back to who we are as individuals, and that authenticity, I think, is really a portal for coming through this as a collective and as humanity, really.
Oh, so exciting. Oh, so exciting. So I as you notice, ladies, you have fallen in love with Anne. As you notice, I can talk to Anne forever. But in the framework of the summit, we have to start wrapping up. And I want to ask you, Anne, if you can call into to your intuition and feel what still needs to be told, especially for the people who are listening. What would you say? What would you like to close with?
What comes through for me is just this invitation I'd like to leave people with, just to be gentle on yourself. As we go through these periods of change, we can have a lot of strange things that are happening in our lives and in our bodies that we don't always fully understand. So just to really meet yourself in a way that's a little more gentle than what you might have in the past, you know, not so much of this pushing and overworking, but just making room to just breathe and be with yourself. The breath is a portal for that gentleness. So that is my closing invitation.
I love it. For all of you listening, you can breathe now. I love that gentleness, curiosity, compassion, really powerful tools that you're giving us. And thank you very much for being here with us. Ladies, delighted to have you here. And I hope that you continue with us in the summit. We have so amazing speakers. You are going to fall in love with these ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blanca.
Did you enjoy this? Here is a selection of other videos that I feel you will love. And please don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share. Love and light.